Hey everyone! In today's video I'm coloring a page from Walk in the Woods using acrylic markers. But not just any markers. You might remember I recently tried the Arrtx 48 set of acrylic markers and did a little review. That was actually my first time using markers and I ended up really loving them. They've become part of my regular coloring routine, both in books and in my own artwork. Now the Arrtx team kindly sent me another set to try, this time with a brush tip and liquid ink. So in this video I'll be testing out how these new markers compare to that first set and what kind of effects I can get with them in coloring books. The design of these markers is really cool. They have transparent sections so you can actually see the ink inside, which is super helpful. You can even unscrew them slightly to get a better look. The instructions say do shake them well before use, and honestly you probably should, but when I opened them and touched them to the paper, the ink flowed beautifully, thick, smooth, and nicely opaque. I didn't even have to shake or press, it just worked straight away. Still, don't be like me, follow the instructions, they probably know better. Naturally, I jumped into making a color swatch. I had to compare them to the other Arrtx acrylic markers I've been using. Acrylic markers tend to have a more milky or pastel feel, like there's a tiny drop of white mixed into each color. That's just how they work. They're meant to be opaque and matte, more like paint than ink. So instead of that glowing vibrancy, you get just a bit softer, more artistic look, which I actually love, combining in coloring books and mixed media pages, but you can still make a lovely, vibrant artwork. When I compare these two sets of acrylic markers side by side, I actually think they're quite similar. The colors even look almost the same. However, since this new set uses liquid ink, I'm really curious to experiment a bit and see what the actual differences are and how that might affect the way I use them in coloring books. So today I'm going to color a full page using only markers and see how that goes. I might test how they layer with color pencils at the end too, just out of curiosity. I know most people don't really use a brush with acrylic markers. They usually apply them directly and keep that thick, opaque look. But as you probably know by now, I like to experiment a little, and when I used markers, I often tried to dilute the paint. If the ink is still wet, I sometimes go in with a brush and a bit of water to soften the lines or blend the edges. It doesn't always work perfectly, but sometimes it creates a really nice painterly effect and gives me that smoother, softer feeling I love. So feel free to break the rules because I definitely will. That said, applying color with this beautiful brush tip is already super enjoyable and easy, and then you can decide which parts you want to dilute or leave bold. The tip is lovely if you want to neutralize the black lines, and still a great brush to fill in the larger details easily. I'm starting with some colorful leaves, and right away I can tell that these markers behave quite differently. They stay wet much longer. I can actually paint with them, mix colors beautifully, and work with a brush for much longer than I could with the first Arrtx markers. So they definitely seem to serve a different purpose. And honestly, I'm kind of excited about that because painting is totally my thing and I love working with a brush. That said, having a marker to fix lines or fill in little details is still amazing. It really makes things so much easier and faster. However, because I'm working in a way that involves diluting the paint a bit with the brush and water, the black lines underneath don't get covered very well, they still show through. Now that might not bother everyone, but it does bother me a little. So I thought I'd try adding a thin layer of white gesso. It dries pretty fast and I'd love to see what kind of effect it gives. White gesso usually covers lines quite nicely in just one layer, and when you work over it with other mediums, the lines disappear naturally. While the gesso dries, I'll continue coloring the rest of the page and see what works best overall. As you can see, the colors blend really nicely and you have enough time to spread and work them before they dry. It's actually a really pleasant experience to paint with these. Now, switching to a brush like this might feel like a hassle to some people, but for me, it's quick and actually way more fun. There's no need to mix colors on a palette. The marker already lays down most of the color. I just soften the lines a bit with some water, and that gives me the smoother look I personally prefer. As for the colors I'm using, I like to go beyond the typical white, pink, and green you'd usually see in an illustration like this. So I'm planning to mix things up a bit and show you how these markers handle color layering and blending. The overall look will still have that soft, slightly pastel feel, but I find it more fun to add unexpected tones here and there. For example, I'll add some bluish shades to the parts that are a bit more in the background, and warmer yellowish tones to the leaves that are more in the front, just to help them pop a bit. I'm also going to mix some red and magenta pink together to see if I can get more vibrant tones, mostly just to explore the possibilities of these markers and how they behave when layered. These markers handle layering pretty well. You won't get full coverage on the first stroke. They do have a bit of transparency, but it's easy to go over the same area a few times. It's still a quick process and I don't mind it at all. The black lines get softened nicely even if they're not completely hidden. That's also why I added a layer of gesso on some of the leaves with heavier black outlines, just to help tone those down a bit more. Next, I'll speed things up a little and show you more of the coloring process, so you can really see how these markers behave in action and maybe get a few ideas for your own coloring books. Then I'll come back at the end with some final thoughts. Overall, I'm quite happy with these markers. What I personally love about acrylic markers is that I can soften the lines with a brush. That's just my style. I like those diluted painterly edges, and these markers let me play with that. The brush tip is really well made. It lets you fill in tiny details easily, but it's also smooth and comfortable for covering larger areas. The ink flows beautifully and the colors mix really well. However, I wouldn't use them completely on their own for a full illustration, especially when I want high contrast or deep values. Since the markers have a slightly pastel feel, when I tried using black directly, some areas turned out more gray than I expected. So it was hard to achieve the depth I was aiming for in certain places. They also don't fully cover the black lines from the coloring book, especially not with the first layer. That's something many colorists care about, so just keep it in mind. They have a bit of transparency, but with a few layers, they tone down the lines pretty well. For heavier outlines, I found that adding a thin layer of white gesso helps a lot. So, where do these markers shine? For me, they're perfect for mixed media coloring. I wouldn't rely on them for everything, but they're fantastic for softening black lines, filling in flowers or leaves, and especially for layering or experimenting with diluted effects while the ink is still wet. Since it doesn't dry too fast, you have time to blend and adjust things, and that's great if you like to paint. They're also super useful for fixing highlights or reworking areas. I used to do that with acrylic paint, but having it in a marker is just way easier. I also tested them with Arrtx colored pencils, and yes, you can correct or enhance areas. Just be aware that the pencils won't glide as smoothly on top of the acrylic layer. If you love very smooth blending, that might be a drawback. But if your priority is painterly effects and color exploration like it is for me, you'll probably enjoy them. And quickly, just to compare this set with the first one, the 48 set of Arrtx acrylic markers I reviewed before, I'll leave a link in the description. The colors are almost the same. The main difference is really in how you use them. This new set is great if you love painting, using a brush, experimenting with layers, and working more fluidly. The ink is liquid, dries a bit slower, and gives you more time to play. If you prefer a simpler approach, quick fills covering highlights and little touch-ups, the first 48 set might actually be better for you. And now, just for fun, here's a little cozy coloring bonus. My nephew and niece are totally into that viral cozy coloring trend right now, and when they saw the markers, they had to try them. So of course I gave them a page to color, and let me tell you, they did such a lovely job. They even added some sweet little details I didn't expect. But the best part, I got some solid feedback from them too. They noticed right away that the 48 marker purple set dries faster and covers black lines better, which they didn't like because apparently in cozy coloring, those black outlines are important for the vibe. On the other hand, today's brush tip set dries more slowly, but the colors layer much better and you can slide them over each other beautifully when dry. And bonus tip, no color bled through the paper, even though it wasn't the best quality, so that's a big win too. I hope I covered most of what you were curious about. If not, just leave a question in the comments and I'll try to answer everything I can. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe got a little inspired to try something new. Until next time, happy coloring!